Hello YouTube, this is Neon, and we're going to be doing part 4 of Compassionate Listening, my new series here for YouTube. So, I just want to reiterate that when somebody compassionately listens to another person speaking, if a person is sharing either their dreams, perhaps the process of achieving those dreams, or some kind of trauma and perhaps the process of healing from that trauma, the listener becomes like a sounding board if they're doing compassionate listening, allowing people to use the listener as a sounding board allows the person to take their thoughts, throw them on a wall, and then come up with a solution because they can now see their situation much more clearly. It's very similar to when a person writes a screenplay or a book. They may put a lot of the parts or perhaps parts of the plot line on cards, and they put these cards up on their wall in their room going all the way around so that they sort of mentally can encapsulate the whole idea of their screenplay or of their book. That's the same idea. It's powerful. This has happened to me where a lady who, when I was 15, she wanted to adopt me, and my biological mother was not going to allow it. But I had shared some issues with her, and she compassionately listened to me, and I was able to completely come up with the solution to my issue, and it was the right solution and a very sound solution. But because this lady loved me and didn't interject and just let me use her as a sounding board, I was able to come up with a really good solution to my own issue. I figured out what I meant, by the way, from part 3 by 70 versus 85 miles. I had shared that when I was driving whenever I drive on the freeway, that I would drive up to 70 miles because I felt that the police are not going to bother arresting somebody or pulling someone over for going within 5 miles of the speed limit. And of course, somebody who was listening, they chimed in and they said, well, I do 85 because I feel more comfortable doing 85. Of course, that's someone who has to share what they believe to be right. When someone else shared something that's really casual, it's not even a serious thing, but they need to let someone else know what their thought is because they listen with their mouth. We as a society, we listen with our mouth and not with our ears, not with our heart, mind, eyes, facial expression. We listen with our mouth. Compassionate listening does not involve the mouth. So, I may have said this, I'm going to reiterate this. Compassionate listening can be like the consummation of autonomy, of independence, and of individuality. When we allow another person to freely express themselves without us having to interject, it is letting that person be free and autonomous and independent. Particularly if we disagree with that person, or even if we agree with them. But if we choose compassionate listening and we just listen, and we don't let them know what our commentary is on what they're saying, we in turn are being autonomous. It's a very quiet form of autonomy and a very quiet form of strength when we can be compassionate listeners. And I believe it to be the consummation of autonomy. Now, something that I had shared before, more than one person admitted straight out that when I had shared with them that I wanted to get in better shape and really get a model physique, they actually said, you are already in good shape. If you get in any better shape, you're going to really make me look bad. You're already making me look bad now. So I personally believe it was because I could see through them. I could see through their false compliment, and it was just jealousy when they said, you don't need to get in any better shape. You're already in good shape. When they said that, I could see right through it. I knew it was just jealousy. They didn't want me to make them look bad. And I believe because they knew that I could see right through them, they just told the truth. You look good now, you're making me look bad, and if you look any better, you're going to really make me look bad. So that's an example of where a person's inability to listen, it's malevolent in that context is a strong word. But to some degree it is malevolent. It's to steal the dream of someone else so that the person who's stealing the dream doesn't look bad. Of course I continue to work out anyway, but with no moral support from anybody. I work out on my own, and I have my goals and my dreams, and I do my best to be inspired by them, inspired by my daily personal growth, and inspired by myself. I've never had anybody say, "Oh, you look like you're in good shape now. Man, if you continue to work out, you're going to be in really good shape." I've never had anybody say anything that was actually encouraging. I do want to share that compassionate listening, it's not for every single situation. If a person shares, I like vanilla ice cream, and then I feel the need to say, well, I like chocolate ice cream, who cares? I mean, that's petty. There's petty things that we may want to cross share just because someone else happened to share something. I'm not here to suggest that a person can never banter, or that they can't banter with their partner over stuff that doesn't matter. So, most things with my personal life. It's interesting because this talk is geared towards submissives, towards what they are supposed to do to me in return for me doming them and blowing their mind and blowing their mind, bringing them to different kinds of euphoria, different kinds of bliss, but yes, blowing their body sexually as well. A good submissive, a skilled submissive can do things that are just mind-blowing. So this whole talk was geared towards submissives. One of the things that I let my submissives know is that I have a lot of personal stuff that I need to share. I'm working on myself, and I read personal growth books, thank God. So I rely on some of the most professional, expert opinion and advice around to construct my life. So I don't need other people to tell me how to construct my life. They tend to tell me the exact opposite of what these brilliant minds tell me in these amazing books that I read. So I let my submissives know that I've lived a tortured life, and that so much of my life that what I have to talk about, it's ugly, but it doesn't mean that I want advice. Okay? And I don't. I have found that submissives they were not capable of listening. As I said before, it's not only because compassionate listening is difficult. If a person doesn't have a great dream for their life, they're not likely to learn how to listen compassionately because it is so difficult. People will do it during job interviews in the hopes that the person interviewing them will just talk and talk and talk, not have the interviewee talk, so that the interviewee doesn't say something that doesn't get them the job, and that hopefully the interviewer would think that the interviewee is a great listener. So the interviewee in that context will suddenly become a compassionate listener for money. In the hopes of getting a job, they'll do a great job of listening. They won't interject. They won't interject their opinions. They won't contradict. They'll listen. They'll show the appropriate amount of eye contact. Their facial expression will be appropriate to what the person's saying. I've done this. I've played this. I've done this myself. And it can be done, but doing it on a regular basis really requires self-discipline and self-mastery. One book that I read about surviving incest says that a person who survived incest, childhood abuse, rape, trauma, particularly from childhood, in the process of healing, will typically go through a 1 to 2 year period minimum, whereby they need to talk about it incessantly. And that this incessant talking about it, it helps them get it out of their system. It helps them face the fact that they were treated like animals, that they were treated as sex objects, as masturbation tools, as less than human. This incessant talking, and this period, as I said, it lasts for a minimum of 1 to 2 years. Another thing that this book said, which was amazing, is they said that in the same way that any disease that a person catches as a result of rape or incest or any kind of sexual abuse cannot be healed by forgiving the perpetrator. Like hepatitis C isn't going to just magically go away because we forgive the perpetrator. Or a virulent form of oral herpes or genital herpes. None of that will go away from us forgiving the perpetrator. Neither will the psychological and emotional trauma magically go away because we've forgiven the perpetrator. This platitude that we constantly hear, even by major talk shows, that we need to forgive in order to heal, is factually not correct. So, as I would try to talk to people, and quite frankly, a lot of times it was with strangers or coworkers, people that I didn't really know, because I suffered with mental illness and was not able to develop relationships. Was one of the main things I was not able to do. Neither love relationships nor friendships. So I would talk to whoever I could, and I found that people would respond to it. They would assume I wanted them to interject their opinion and their advice and how they should solve my problems. And they would say a lot of platitudes. Well, you need to forgive. You need to not talk about it. You need to stop feeling sorry for yourself. You need to think that there's starving children in Africa that have it worse than you. They would say all these platitudes that don't heal. None of that would heal a virulent form of oral herpes, nor would it heal hepatitis C, nor would it heal HIV. These are some of the diseases some people get as a result of rape and sexual abuse. Including children sometimes are inflicted with these diseases. And yet, because people don't believe psychological illness exists, they blame the victim and they tell them you're suffering because of your unwillingness to forgive, because you talk about it, when in fact the exact opposite is true. I've gotten to where I don't have to go into some of the gory details, and I don't talk about it as much anymore, not just because people try to silence me, though they never admit to trying to silence me, but because I have talked about it enough to where I don't need to talk about it so much. And that is in spite of people constantly trying to silence me. As I said, they'll give comparisons of other people who have had it worse, according to them. They'll give unsolicited help. They'll tell me, don't feel bad about it. It's like if I had cancer, well, don't have cancer, you know? Or if the chemotherapy or the radiation is making me perversely sick, well, don't be perversely sick from that radiation. It's outrageous, but they do that and attack people, and that's all it is, for the psychological and emotional consequences of other people's abuse. They do this all the time. They give a bunch of platitude types of advice, like think of the future, don't think of the past, think of others who have it worse. Some of this stuff I've already said, useless stuff. I'm fortunate that I've read so many powerful personal growth books and books that deal with incest and rape and trauma, that I have a sound basis of recovery versus the unsolicited advice of people who do not know what they're talking about. I'm going to stop here. If you like this video, this is part 4 of Compassionate Listening. Please like, subscribe, share, comment commercials, recommend my video. Do one or more of those things. Thank you and best wishes.